live. All right, guys. Just to make sure, if you guys can see me on YouTube, let me know. I don't think I pressed the go live button. All right, guys. So we have 5.5 more minutes to go. Kobe says, hi, Amanda and Dre. Happy Friday. I think I was saying hi to everyone in the other platforms. I forgot about you guys. My bad. All right.
I'm loving these vibes. These are good vibes going into the weekend.
Love it, love it. Oh, where are you calling in from, Amanda?
I'm in Virginia.
Oh, Virginia. No wonder. For some reason, I thought you were in San Diego, and I thought you were up pretty early when I was tweeting. I was like, wow, you're up at around 6:30 a.m.
Oh, no. Absolutely not. I don't wake up early.
All right, guys, if you're just tuning in, we got our special guest, Amanda Milligan of Stacker Studio, and we'll be talking about content syndication for SEO and so much more. Carol Fry, hello from Seattle, Washington. Let's see, are we live? Yes, we're live on Twitter as well, guys. Be sure to retweet and tweet and like. Cool stuff. Loving this. Stefan, my man. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Anastasia. Hi, Amanda.
Hey. Thanks for joining.
Rayham.com. Yo, Dre. What's up, Ray? All right, yeah, so your connection looks good now. You're not pausing or anything, so that's good. And I can hear you just fine.
Good.
Love it, love it. All right, guys, if you're just tuning in, we got three more minutes to go. It looks like the Stream Elements bot just came in. We got Amanda Milligan of Stacker Studio. We'll be talking about content syndication for SEO and so much more. Learning her SEO journey, all her speaking gigs that she's been on. She's been on, well, you spoke at like Search Love, Brighton SEO, all kinds of, right?
Yeah, MozCon last year. Yeah,
MozCon.
I was on the circuit for a couple of years.
Love it. We'll see how that goes, guys. We'll see what she presented and all kinds of great stuff we'll be talking about today. So if you get your questions ready about content syndication, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, love answering people's individual questions because I feel like it could vary so much by person we have this combo.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. We have. All right. Yeah, everything looks good. We got 2 more minutes. Be sure to get your shouts out, guys. Send a live chat. Yasmin Haas. Hello, Amanda and Dre.
Hello.
Jeremy, what up? Jeremy says, I need to be playing the trumpet with shades behind you, man. Your live rhythm section. Love it, man. Jeremy, my man. If you play the trumpet, man, send me some tunes. I'll play it live. All right, guys. So Amanda, we got about about 30 seconds to go. So I'm going to go ahead and put you on mute, and I'll introduce you about 8 minutes after 12. All right, guys.
That's good.
You're just tuning in. We got Amanda Milligan of Stacker Studio. We'll be talking about content syndication for SEO. Get your questions ready.
Hey, time to get it started, no delay, let's work. Wanna see you be an SEO expert. Paul Andre De Vera, steady dropping knowledge. Over 15 years in the game, so he knows all about it. Master the art of SEO, you will be amazed. Time to get your brand off page to on page. Dropping knowledge, legendary for sure. Whether you're just getting started or self-employed entrepreneur. Yeah, let's go. Subscribe to the SEO video show.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the SEO video show where SEO is alive and fun. My name is Paul Andre De Vera, aka Dre, and I curate SEO videos released in the past week into about 1 minute clips. My favorite part of the show is when I get to introduce my guest, and my guest this week is the head of marketing at Stacker Studio, Amanda Milligan. Before we get started, let's say what's up to everyone in chat. I see Jeremy, Yasmin, Anastasia, Ray, Stefan, Carol, Kobe, Bradley, Ernesto, Fletcher, and so much more. Thank you everyone for coming by. Please support the channel by liking, subscribing, and hitting that notification bell. Now let's get on with the show.
Hey Dre, why did the SEO cross the road? They wanted to get hit by traffic!
Google updated its documentation on site names to mention subdomains. So Google search only supported one site name per site and now supports sublevel homepage site names with structured data. Google posted a blog on how their topic authority system works. In a nutshell, Google systems understand publications that seem especially relevant to topics or locations, and Google systems looks at how other publishers cite original reporting to understand how the publication is influential and authoritative on the topic. Google systems also look at sources' history of high quality reporting of recommendations from expert sources such as professional societies. Okay, rules for Google Snippets by Nathan from Income School. Let's check this one out.
A couple of these basic rules include keeping your snippet between 150 characters and 300 characters. Now, characters, note that I said characters. This is someone that people mess up on all the time. It's not words, it's characters. The Google snippets are really, really short. The second one is making sure that your Google snippet is concise, encyclopedic, and standalone. And the third one is the formatting of the snippet. While this one is important, it could look a number of different ways. This could include where you put your snippet in the post. It could include some bolding and just making sure that it's as helpfully constructed as possible. Above all, it's the information in the snippet that will make it the most helpful. And not only just the information, but it's how you put and craft the information in that Google snippet that will most likely make or break it.
We should look closely at how to optimize for snippets today, because I mean, with this new search generative experience, it looks pretty much like snippets are still being included in the SERPs. From what I can see in the beta version of SGE, page 1 is pretty much the SGE UX and snippets, and then position 1. Okay, how many of you are optimizing for snippets? I mean, I like the idea of possibly formatting my blog into like 30 character paragraphs. This is something I plan on testing with my own blog, so I'll be sure to share my results. Okay, Nathan Gotch talks about content refreshing as one of his SEO strategies. Let's check this one out.
Okay, so you know the importance of creating the most fresh and up-to-date piece of content, okay? That's absolutely critical. But now what we're gonna talk about is, before you ever think about even optimizing a page, like if you go in here and you're gonna say, I'm gonna just use Surfer, or I'm gonna use some on-page SEO tool to optimize this, I don't recommend doing that, especially for a post that's been around for a long time. I would immediately just skip to upgrading, right? We upgrade first. Once it's upgraded and we think that we have one of the best assets for this keyword, Then we talk about optimization, okay? So we start with the angle, we start with the content, and we start there and we get that right. We have to get that right, and then we move into optimize. So the question is, how do we make this post better, all right? And so if we think about Google's EEAT guidelines, we know it's experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, okay? Out of all of those factors, one of them really is important on the content level, especially when you're doing any type of list posts or reviews, talking about restaurants, talking about products, talking about services, anything like that, okay? Experience, the first E in there, is critical. You need to be able to demonstrate firsthand experience with whatever you're reviewing, whatever list posts you're making.
An exercise I've also done when refreshing content is possibly looking to combine articles. I mean, check to see if you have multiple pages ranking for keywords, and think about refreshing the ones of the articles and incorporating them all together. Okay, have you ever had a company bid on your brand on search? Andrew Shotland shares an SEO play to combat this hijackers.
Several years ago, a local marketing company that shall remain nameless started advertising against my name. So if you typed Andrew Shotland, you would see an ad for these guys. And basically they were like, hey, are you looking for local SEO help? Because I guess people thought of me as a local SEO. And they were trying to hijack my fans searching for me. And so I couldn't stop them from advertising on my name, or maybe I could, I don't know. Instead, I updated the title tag and the meta description to the page on my site that ranked just below the ad. And it basically said, hey, look at this ad above. They're hijacking my queries. Can you please click on them repeatedly and not buy anything from them? And send it to all your friends to click on repeatedly and not buy anything from them. And if you've used superior goofy SEO strategies like this one, please let us know in the comments below. And we will all be incredibly visible throughout the entire network of LinkedIn and be celebrities, which is...
In my experience, in my enterprise experience, this has happened all the time. I mean, I've combated this by having my colleagues click on our hijackers, people who've been hijacking our brand ads until their budget's used up, and repeat the next day until they see their ROI is like nothing. Okay, things to look for when fixing a Google Core Update problem with Glenn Gabe. Let's check this one out.
So let's see, we have user experience, thin content, technical problems that cause quality problems is another one. So technical problems alone do not cause broad core update hits, but imagine you had a technical problem that suddenly is dishing out tons of thin content and you don't even know that's happening. I've seen that a ton of times, right? So it's like, you surface, let's say 80,000 pages and they were like, what is that? And they dig in, they're like, oh yeah, that was a bug. And suddenly it's generating all these URLs with either like no content or like a one paragraph or whatever it may be. So you could have stuff like that going on. You could also have technical problems where Google comes across no content, but to you and your own crawlers, you see the content. Right. So I have some interesting stories on that I can't share around here. But yeah, that could be happening too. So now we have three big buckets, right? We have thin content, we have user experience, which incorporates a lot of different things, and you have technical SEO problems that can cause quality problems. Right. So within that, especially on larger scale and complex sites, that could be a lot of stuff.
Someone who produces great content is my guest today. This brings me to my favorite part of the show. Please ask questions on topic and I will address them in the order that they were received. Please support the channel while I get things ready here. Amanda is an in-demand conference speaker and blogger. She's sought after for her expertise in content marketing and link building. She's presented at MozCon, Brighton SEO, State of Search, and PubCon. She's written for TechCrunch, Search Engine Journal, SEMrush, and Moz. Please welcome the head of marketing at Stacker Studio, Amanda Milligan. Amanda, welcome to the show. Oh no.
That was the coolest show I ever had.
Love it, love it. Okay, you're cutting out just a little bit. Hold on, let's make sure. Okay, now I can see you moving. All right. All right, I'm gonna get right into it. This is the first question I ask all my. Oh, you know what? Everyone, give a round of applause. Listen. Welcome, Amanda. Okay, I'm gonna get right into it. First question I ask all my SEO professionals here in 1 minute or less. How does Amanda get ranking on page 1 of Google?
Okay, hopefully I'm not too delayed because I do look delayed on the video, but if you can hear me. So, technical SEO needs to be sound, right? Then the content is going to be probably the #1 thing to get you ranking on page 1. So if the content is up to date, comprehensively answers the query, if that's not ranking you on page 1, then you need to be getting into the link earning realm, which we'll probably be talking about today, and also just building the authority of your brand overall, right? Like, you can't just rely. I think people forget why they're building links in the first place or trying to get links. It's because people want to trust what you're saying, but they want to trust your brand. If your brand's trustworthy, your content will be more trustworthy. So I think that's the 3-step process. Technical SEO first, content second, all the offsite SEO third.
Love that. First knowledge bomb of today. Hold on, let's rewind this quick. Hold on. Amanda, take us way back. When did you first get into SEO?
I fell into SEO. I think a lot of people fall into SEO. They don't mean to end up in the industry. My degree was in journalism, and I didn't want to be a journalist. So I was asking around. I was like, what the hell do I do with this degree if I don't want to be a journalist? And everybody I talked to was in social media. That was getting really big back then. This was also the time of Penguin and Panda.
Okay.
So they were mass hiring writers out of school because suddenly people realized we can't produce terrible content anymore. We actually have to hire people who know how to write. So I ended up working at an agency as a writer, producing articles. I didn't even know what SEO was. Found out through that job, like, oh, people care. Like, there's a whole industry behind what's ranking in Google. So found that fascinating. Have basically been in that industry ever since.
Love that. So what part of SEO you found fascinating? Like, what made you so interested in it?
I think that I've started in content, and that remains one of the most interesting parts to me. The ways in which brands can communicate information to customers, how much we take for granted, and like some of the cliches or the best practices that don't apply to everything, right? Like how you can be creative and come up with the best ways to answer queries. Content to me is just so foundational. So that remains one of the most interesting things. And that's kind of how I ended up getting into link earning as well, because they kind of go hand in hand if you're doing it correctly.
Yep. Love that. Okay, so a lot of people do learn SEO from their positions at agencies. So I mean, like, how did you learn SEO? Like, what are some of your resources?
God, resources, there's so many. Slack groups, I feel like, have become my biggest resource these days. Or LinkedIn groups, or they have been so helpful. Like, it's honestly incredible how many people are willing to offer their time and give you really customized advice and tips. So highly recommend. I mean, God, there's so many, like the Mostly Marketing group on LinkedIn, but there's also Women in Tech SEO, there's Traffic Think Tank, there's Superpath, there's so many groups that are excellent no matter what your specialization, and if you're not in them, I suggest you join.
Love that. Big shout out to Liam. He has the Slack group called Mostly Marketing. You can look it up on LinkedIn, and you can find the link on there and to the Slack. So be sure to check that one out. Okay, so now let's get into where you're at today, Stacker Studio. I've actually met you. I believe I met you when you're at Stacker Studio. I was a client at Twin Gates, and where we actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I've actually we first met, and when I found out about Stacker, I was like, "What? When did I hear? I did not hear about this earlier." Or like, what? Because when I was actually kind of dropped on my plate because I was running the growth marketing there, and I was like, "This is so cool." Can you tell us a little bit more about Stacker Studio and like kind of like the concept of what you guys are doing, so others out there can kind of know a little more about it?
Sure, I had the same reaction you did because, like I said, I've been doing content and link earning for like the last 10 years or so. And when they approached me and said, oh, we don't have to pitch our content. First of all, that blew my mind because I was like, that's like the hardest part in a lot of cases is, cool, I created this content, but how do I get anybody to link to it? When they explain, so as I'll explain to you all, me is they are fundamentally so like the Associated Press or Reuters, except for more data journalism and feature news. And the different thing about Stacker, which is really cool, is that they give their content away for free. So, did you lose me?
Yeah, I'm losing you. We just got like the thing about Stacker Studios. We're giving content away for free on these sites. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're giving content away for free to publishers all over the world. So normally, you know, they have to pay Associated Press to get access to their stories, but the whole function of Stacker is that we're trying to empower both national and local publishers, give them free content to help them bolster their content on their site. The way that we're able to pay for that, we have a whole newsroom. The way that we're able to fund a newsroom creating this content and giving it away for free is that we partner with brands. And that's what Stacker Studio is. Stacker Studio is our brand partnership arm. Brands hire us, like you mentioned, Twingate. They hire us to create newsworthy stories on their behalf, and then we send them out through our syndication network or our newswire, and they get picked up. It's not paid for. We're not paying them to do it. They have no obligation to do it, so it's all earned. And that's the rare thing that people hear syndication and they think like, oh, you know, like we're sponsored tags or no follow. These are like do follow links, earned pickups, very unique. So when I heard that, I was like, that is amazing. I need to get involved.
Man, see, that's really interesting too, because I mean, but how can someone do that for themselves? Because I know, like, you know, you said you have your own newsroom. So are you building partnerships with these brands so that they actually pick it up? I mean, because if you're not pitching them, how do they get a hold of the articles? Because I see like they'll get published on MSN or, you know, certain stuff like that. It's like, okay, so how did they even know that you created it, and why would they pick it up?
So I feel like I heard two questions there. The first one being like, how can people do it for themselves, right? Which I think we could have a whole convo about that, because not everybody has the resources. And that those like, or either you don't have the resources, so you could do this on a smaller scale for sure. And we can talk about that. Then there's brands that have the budget, want to build a whole internal this. We don't want to have full content team.
Well, you're cutting out.
So they have an agency like, I should reconnect.
You're cutting out. Let's get. Okay, you're back.
Should I try reconnecting, because it might help?
Oh no, you're we can if you want to try, but it looks like everything's fine right now. Okay. Sorry
about this. I don't know.
No. It's okay. So we want to, so we can talk about like how someone could do it on a lower scale, but then you can also talk about like how, you know, how you guys are doing, how you build you have more companies that have more budget, like Stacker can like build it, can scale it like really bigger.
Yeah, because that's the thing. It's like we did all the work of building those relationships, which takes so much time. So when we send a story out, we're sending it to like 3,000 publishers. And each story on average gets picked up like 150 to 200 times because we have such a wide pool, and it's all like they choose whether to run it. If you're doing it on your own, as you know, you're either building your own, you know, you're reaching out to sites, whether to just pitch them what you did so that they link to it, or set up a syndication partnership. I mean, there's precedent for
You're cutting out again. Did you want to try to reconnect? Let's have you try and reconnect. Okay. All right, guys. Let's have Amanda reconnect here while we get things going. But if you guys have any questions, get them ready. If you want to, let's see here. And Amanda, just wave at me when you're back on. Okay, are you connected right now, Amanda, or not?
I am. I'm just trying to get even closer to my router.
Okay.
There's no issue.
All right, let's go ahead. We see that was a quick. Let me get you back on here. All right. Let me turn down the music. All right, there we go. All right, we got Hobby already with this question here. Wait, what is it? Hey, Hobby. I don't think that's on topic, but ask another question. All right. So, Amanda, okay, now it looks like everything looks good now. I want to make sure, let's talk about, again, so so if someone wants to like start their own type of syndication, I mean, there's two different ones. We have we have the big budgets, and we can talk about more about like starting our own. But you said it's basically building the relationships, right? Because you're kind of like working with the relationships that a Stacker Studio was able to do, right? And they're able to just pick it up with just 3,000. So I mean, like, how do you even develop a relationship with 3,000 places?
Yeah, I mean, an individual brand just doesn't, right? Like,
Yeah.
they won't. So a lot of it will just come down to maybe there's publications you've always wanted to be mentioned on. Maybe there are publications where your audience is. Maybe there are publications that have really great domain authority in your space. If you're especially a brand that doesn't have these resources, you don't have to stress about like getting a million links every month. You do what you can with what you have. And especially if, like I said, it is a three-pronged approach. So it only makes sense to really invest a lot of money if your on-site content is solid and really good. So again, if there's like not a lot of interest to do this type of work, I think content should be your focus, both on-site and what you're trying to pitch. But yeah, that's the benefit of why these agencies exist, right? It's why Stacker exists. It's why various other agencies exist. It's because you get a partner in it rather than relying on doing it yourself. Because what it would take is a team. You would have to have people who, either an internal team or freelancers, who are creating content, and then another set who's promoting it. And they're two different skill sets. You're rarely going to find it. If you find somebody who could do both very well, hire them immediately.
Love it. All right. So let's go. Let's get into a study that you've done. You studied it then. You actually had some insights of syndicating to over 4,000 stories and about the type of content publishers prefer. So what type of content do publishers prefer after, with these insights?
So I can answer this question in a few different ways,
Okay.
But I'll start with the study. Originally, I did a presentation last year at SearchLove where I had gone in, and I mentioned we have a syndication network.
Okay.
So we're able to see, this was so interesting to me. We have all the data on every story we've sent out and how many times it has been picked up.
Okay.
Meaning how many times that story was run by different publications. So I've never had access to that kind of data before. And I went like star-eyed emoji when I saw it. It's like, we have to do something with this because people will be, I was fascinated by it, so I knew other marketers would be. So those trends, when I did that presentation that I saw, some of them were still the same this year, and I'll get to that I ran a different report just for 2022.
Okay.
But I did all the stories we had done. It was like 4,000, and I looked at the top performing ones. And I discovered a couple things. Service journalism was doing well. And what service journalism means is that we're essentially helping people do something. And this, in the marketing world, is known as how-to content.
Okay.
But what we were seeing is that publishers are actually running this more and more. And a lot of the content that we had created that was like, how to find a car insurance company or how to take out a loan or whatever it was. Not usually that broad, because that's very broad, but we would do pieces like that for brands that were more serviceable, were performing really well. Other things, one of the biggest things that remains a trend, and I think is the most underrated type of content there is localized content. So no matter when I examine this, it's always one of the top performing types of content. And by that, I mean, you can take a story and look at it nationally or internationally, but people tend to care more about what's happening near them. That's just humanity. If something's happening down the street from you, it's extremely relevant versus something happening, across the world. So what we've done is most government data sets or comprehensive data sets used to create a piece of content have the ability to narrow it down by country, state, city, zip code, whatever it is. And we'll create the national version of that story and send it out, but then we'll create the localized version of that story and send it out. And by that, I mean, it could be as simple as changing the headline. So say it's like, here, I'm just making this up, and it's probably not a story we did, but like, the top states for employment in, I mentioned insurance before. So it's top states for employment and insurance, right? So you could say it like that. You could send a story out that's like top states for employment and insurance. Right? It doesn't sound interesting. It would be better than that. So you can send out that version. But then you can take the data and say, let's look at it by state. And you already had that in the national version. What you're doing is just repackaging it and saying, for some reason, the first state that came to my mind was Nebraska. So shout out Nebraska. Nebraska is the number one state for insurance jobs or whatever. But saying Nebraska or Virginia or I am or Florida where I'm from or whatever it is in the headline suddenly gets so much more interesting to publishers in those states and thus more interesting to audiences in those states. And you use the same data, you just repackaged it. And you get sometimes up to twice as many links doing that. So I wanted to take time to talk about that because I think that people pitching content for links overlook high authority, respected local publishers. And I think that that's a mistake. So we've had a lot of success localizing content. I mentioned the service journalism aspect. What I recently saw was that superlative content continues to do extremely well. And by superlative, I mean the best, XYZ, the worst XYZ, whatever, the most, the least, the biggest, the smallest. However, the caveat to that is that it has to be data-based.
Okay.
So not like the BuzzFeed listicles of the past that were like, here are, top 10, like based on just, subjectivity and somebody decided that these are the best of the worst. If it's based on data and has a basis in that kind of truth, people are very interested to hear. So like, top airlines with the most delays and airlines with the least delays, you're suddenly like, I want to know, I fly, I want to know what those are. And like, you're not just saying it based on anecdotal experience.
Yeah.
So those also, have continued to kill it. And I think one of the commonalities you'll see as I talk about this is data being the foundation of a lot of this content. So that's kind of the cheat code in a way. If you're able to have access to data sets of your own internal data, but also we use government data, free government data all the time. You have inherent stories in there that, especially if you can interpret it in a way that hasn't been interpreted yet, you can see a lot of success.
Love that. So you mentioned government data, but there's other data sets out there. So what are some other data set sources that you've used to kind of put together some stories from?
Yeah, so like outside of government, by government I mean like the census and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They're like, we do a lot of real estate stories, so you can do things like Redfin, and sometimes it's not like it's just available. You can get like access to an API, or you have to like make an account or whatever it is. But absolutely worth those steps if you find a company that has data that you're like, hell yes, and you're citing them, of course, and you're linking to them. That's sometimes half the reason they release this data in the first place is for their own promotion. But yeah, at the top of my head, it's like, for real estate, you can do things like that. We've done partnerships with different companies to like TripAdvisor for travel. It's almost like that these companies have that data already, and a lot of the time they offer it up like via an API or something. So if you imagine that the data exists, it might. And it's just like kind of finding the right organization and seeing if they're willing to give it to you, as long as you're also promoting them at the same time. But some places will like run their own surveys or try to create the data, whatever you got to do. But a lot of the times what it comes from is a question that you have. So if you don't know the answer to something interesting about your industry, that's what sparks the brainstorm around like, does this data exist? Is there a way to prove this or examine this? And then you can kind of go on the wild goose chase, or do the reverse. If you have, our newsroom has a list of data sets because we cover all kinds of topics. We work with all kinds of clients, and also we already have a newsroom that creates content anyway. So they have a running list of sources. Not just that, when they're typically updated. So another thing you can do is, even for government data, like Bureau of Labor Statistics or Census has like 1 million reports, is find out when they're updated, because sometimes it's every few months, and if you're like the first one to see those updates and discover something interesting about them, you can get the leg up. It's fresh, even though it's a report that's existed for a long time. It's been updated. So that's another thing I suggest people do, is like mark those things down, take a look at the last time they were updated, get a sense of how often they're refreshed, and keep track of those things. Put them in your calendar to like have alerts so that you get exactly when the new stuff comes out, because suddenly all the historical stuff gets more relevant when there's a new, like a 2023 benchmark to compare it to.
Love that. Okay, so this is a question too, because I've been actually kind of creating my sources of data sets, and but one of the things is like, how do you come up with the idea of a story or like the title? It's like, I'm like, okay, I have all this data now. How can I create a story out of this one? So, what are some exercises you guys do? How do you guys brainstorm stories that are cool to like put out there?
It's so hard. When I mentioned promotions was like half the battle, this is the other half of the battle, is the ideation, and you're 100% right that like you should invest a lot in this point of the process, because without the right idea you can promote to hell and back and nothing will happen, like if it's not interesting. So sometimes it helps to like backtrack from some of the things I was saying, like there could be a national, you can have a national data set or something, like maybe you have an idea about a general topic and you ask yourself, it's kind of like a list of questions. So on that list of questions is, does this change locally? Or if this is a local thing that's happened, is this the same nationally? Is this the same internationally? Another question is getting context. This is something that our newsroom does a lot. They consider, what is the context of anything that's happening? Meaning, what's the history of this? What does this compare to? And do those comparisons kind of make something a little more tangible for readers? Like, you see this a lot with insane amounts of money. They're like, oh, $4.5 trillion. It's like, what does that even mean? That's just a lot of money. Yeah. And then you'll see some headlines saying, like, that's actually, paying 400, Tom Brady's. Or I'm completely
so you kind of kind of find that kind of an analogy that's off to create that kind of.
Yes. So it's like context. It's like, how do I put this into the proper context of this actually means something to somebody? And that's overlooked, and often what newspapers are doing. Like, that's what news sites are trying to do. So if you're able to do that in an interesting way, you're really going to pique their interest, because it's what they're trying to do anyway. So in that list of questions, it's like, if it's if it's national, can this be localized? Vice versa. What's the history of this? How has it changed? How does this compare to similar or different things, to try to help add that context? It's that list of data sets where you can see what exists, and if you're looking at some data, that is hard. I'm not gonna lie, like especially if that's not your background, just like have a bunch of columns of data and say, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? But some of those questions just kind of help you think through what might be interesting. And I also would suggest that that's not your background. If you are going to hire any help, it could be useful just to hire like a freelancer who is a data analyst or a data interpreter to help, like to just talk, because you might even have ideas and not know how to look for it. Or vice versa, like they could find something and be like, this is weird, this happened in this year but doesn't happen in any other year prior, or like here's a clear trend, like does that mean something to you because maybe you know more about it? Like that kind of partnership can work really well.
Love it.
Excellent.
All right. So let's go ahead and get some questions from the audience. We have one from Stefan, because we actually talk about like service journalism type of content, and this is an interesting question, because I'm curious if you've worked with e-commerce companies, and like if you were able to kind of like, what type of content if you put there goes, hi Amanda, what type of content do you recommend for promoting e-commerce sites?
It's a great question, Stefan. A lot of the time it comes down to what you're selling. So we do work with e-commerce sites, and kind of a general way to answer your question that applies to basically everybody is to remember that this is not content the content I'm talking about is not content to drive conversions. Okay, so like giant asterisk caveat, you're going to need on-site content that's meant to move people through the funnel. But if we're talking about earning links, then we're talking about tangential content. What tangential content is a little more zoomed out from the type of content you're probably already creating. So you're not talking about like, if you sell pet supplies, you're not talking about like the best leashes that you can buy, because someone's gonna be like, okay, that's not news, that's you trying to sell me a leash for my dog, which could be great for search and for your funnel. But if we're talking tangentially, then you would say, okay, I'm zooming out. I sell pet supplies, but let's talk about pets, because if you zoom out to pets, you suddenly have a massive amount of things you could be talking about that aren't just the literal products you're selling on your site. That's still appealing to your audience, obviously, because they have pets, while also increasing the chances that you appeal to a wider audience, which is more interesting to publishers. They want to appeal to a wide audience. So my baseline feedback is to take that zoom out point, say like, what general industry or what general topic area am I in, and then ideate from there. That's going to be the type of content that works well for link earning. Not, but you'll see sites that do this all the time, like major sites that do this for their on-site content as well. I did a presentation recently where I used ClickUp as an example. They're one of our clients, and we don't do this part for them, but they have on-site content where, they talk about productivity or more general topics that are relevant to having ClickUp as part of your company, but aren't necessarily exactly, that's not what they give you. They don't give you productivity tips. They give you the tools to be more productive, but they'll have guides about productivity that are completely unrelated to what they do. So if you take this step back and think about, okay, if I sell pet supplies, what can I talk about that's more general pet related? And that could be, the most popular breeds per state. I mean, you can imagine those things have done well. I'm naming things that haven't done, but suddenly everyone who has a dog or a cat is like, their interest is piqued, and they're much more likely to link to something like that than like, here's a list of leashes you can buy.
Love it, Stefan. Hopefully that answers your question there. And Hobby, I saw a bunch of questions come in here, and they, if you can sum it up to just one question, let me know and I'll ask it. And so I want to go into more of like your, again, we've talked about like the type, how to find the content and ideas. So like, how are you, like, I guess we could talk about this a little bit too. We talked about how you can headline structures. Like, have you observed to be the most attractive for readers? I mean, what kind of like headlines have you been seeing?
Oh man, okay. If you're listening to this and you want like the full breakdown of this, send me an email, because I have a deck that does this really well. I'm gonna try to give you the some of the things that I remember, and I might even pull it up if I have forgotten. This is not info from me. I'll caveat that. We have my colleague on my team manages our MSN syndication partnership. So as part of like who we send content to, MSN is one of those partners. Okay. And that's like a specific relationship kind of outside of our syndication network. You can syndicate through MSN. And she leads up our editorial strategy and has altered headlines to increase engagement and clicks. She's a genius in this. And I sat down with her and my mind was blown of the tips that she gave. So let me, actually, if you don't mind and give me like 2 seconds, I'm going to pull up some specific examples, because I think it's hard to talk generally about it. Because like one of them is about like, you hear this a lot with email subject lines too, about like piquing curiosity. But I want to show, like, people sometimes they hear that and like, cool, what does that actually mean? Okay, so I found the checklist. Okay. Here is the checklist of things. Challenge preconceived notions, and I'll walk through quickly each of these. Lead with an interesting statistic. I think that one's more straightforward, and you see that a lot with pitching. It's like, what is the most interesting stat? And just put it right in the headline. The third is calling out the data source. So we've seen a lot of success with saying in the headline that it's based on data. When people see like a study says or the CDC says or whatever, it adds a level of credibility that makes them want to click on it. So that's a big one. And then making it sound human is another one. So let me talk about, challenge preconceived notions. one of the examples I have is common household items that are actually bad for the environment. So instead of saying, here are, these items are bad for the environment, it's like, it's kind of just the word like actually. Sometimes it's little tweaks that make you think, that means that there's probably some things that I thought, were safe and they're not. Like, it's these little subtle differences that make you think you might not know what's in the article. That can work extremely well. The other example I have for make sure it sounds human is literally sometimes talking in the second person, meaning you or yours. So not being so like kind of sterile. So like in this case, it was most stolen cars in America and steps you can take to avoid losing yours. Suddenly that becomes much more personal. You could have stopped, here's the most stolen cars in America. It's like, all right. But then we added on the service journalism part of what you can do to keep your car from being stolen. So those change, like we had some changes. She literally would take a headline. So we had a story called 10 Potential Early Signs of Dementia. She added to that story, according to the CDC. And it got 165% increase in page views. Literally just adding according to the CDC.
Oh,
so these changes might not seem, they don't take a lot of your time.
Yeah,
it's nailing the wording. So like another example, most humid cities in America. Okay, this is my favorite example because I'm from South Florida and I have opinions on the most humid cities in America. So when she tweaked that headline to "This is the most humid city in America according to data," and no, it's not Florida, she put everything in that. It was according to data was put in there, and then no, it's not Florida, which is subverting expectations. I had to click on this. I mean, it had so many different things that were kind of like baiting me to click. So those are the 4. Just run through the headlines of like what you've created. This will also kind of maybe apply to your on-site content. It's just like think of these things. Is there a data source you can refer to? How can you kind of position it to maybe call on the things that are surprising in this story? Excuse me. But they can make that change that I just referred to with the humidity was an 800% page view increase. And it was just a headline change. It's just wild. Like, she told me this stuff, and I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So, okay, guys. So, if you guys want to make sure you increase that click, just talk about like kind of like reference an authority, right? Like a huge authority on data, like the CDC or even the government or whatever it is. But yeah, that's interesting. Love to hear that. So, we got a question here. Let's go back to the questions in the audience. We have one from Jeremy. Jeremy asks, Amanda, we'd love to hear about one of your best client success stories. I'm sure clients get a massive amount of traffic boost.
Yeah, so, and they're not my success stories because it's a whole team here, right? Yeah. So that wouldn't be fair. But if we're talking about like what Stacker has done, it is really incredible to see people's traffic consistently grow. And I think that is a key point here. Like, we don't work with folks who want to just like get a viral story and call it quits because we don't think that actually helps with anything. It might help with PR, right? Which is a whole other category. But we work with people, and to see their keyword rankings improve, their organic traffic double and remain doubled and continue to grow is really incredible. And actually something that, again, if people want this specific document, let me know. But we have an SEO team internally who did a case study of 70 clients that we worked with and compared their before and after of all these different metrics I'm talking about, like keyword growth and traffic growth, and to see the average increase that we've been able to to impact these companies, it is just, it's really rewarding to be able to see the data behind it and know, like, yeah, we knew that it was helping, but to see it as a general trend, to know that it's working, is really awesome. So we have specific case studies on our site and specific numbers, but mostly it's their traffic is going up consistently because their organic searches and their keywords have improved. It's awesome. It's really awesome to see.
I would love. Please, later on, I'll put that in the and I'll pin it to the live to the comments, guys. So I'll get that link of that case study of the great things. I mean, I know when we were using, or I mean, even at Twingate, we would see like this massive amount of keyword ranking boosts. I mean, the thing is also, I'm curious, like, do you actually add more publishers? Because, when it comes to backlinks and you get all these backlinks, you have the set amount of referring domains. But, when you get from the same ones, it can kind of maybe flatten there. So are you guys constantly adding like new syndication sites or new like places where people can pick up the story?
That's a really great question. So we've actually seen more success than people would think, even with the repeated pickups. We found because they're so authoritative. I think you have to have a certain level of like, if SF Gate is the one republishing you, that means you didn't have like a fluke one time with a great piece of content. It means you're consistently creating great content. However, we also have an internal team that's specifically our publisher team. We know that the newswire is the foundation of our entire mission and our entire company. And so they are trying to make sure that everybody who can has access to our content and is adding new sites to our network all the time. And like, in the way that we work with clients, they're doing the same thing with publishers. You're saying, hey, just so you know, we are a resource or an asset you might not have known about. And this is not just national. These are also local publishers who might have no idea that we exist. And they're tasked with finding and adding more. Because you're right, like we want to, for multiple reasons, for our brand partners, but also just because our mission is to empower publications all over the world. We want to make sure that they know that they have this free resource. So yes.
Love that. Let's grab one more question. Hobby actually asked one here that kind of sums some things up here. Amanda, do you follow any women SEO experts on social media? If yes, who?
Oh, on social media specifically? Yes, two people come to mind. Adrian Shears is wonderful, and so is Brooke Sellis. Those are the two names that come off the top of my head over social media experts who are fantastic women who really know what they're talking about. I recommend following them on Twitter and on LinkedIn.
Love that. Okay, let's get back to, I got a couple more questions here. We're coming close to time already. This time flew by quick. All right, so I want to go into how does, there's something I want to ask here. Let me go and find this here. So I want to talk about what can you explain the difference between the benefits of owned syndication versus earned syndication?
Yes, I ended up creating a whole blog post about this because the word syndication is so confusing. It's used in so many different ways, and we kind of created a new one. So it was like, how the hell are we supposed to talk about syndication and have anybody know what we're talking about? So I'm glad you asked. Owned syndication is if you create an article and you publish it on your blog, and then you publish it on your LinkedIn, and then you publish it on your Medium, and they're all things that you have control over. But it's strategic, it makes sense, you're trying to increase your audience, you're using canonicals, you have your blog post as the core one, but you're trying to get more people to see it, right? That's the benefit of that. So a lot of people do own syndication. Paid syndication is, like I referred to earlier, where there's some services where you can pay to have your articles sent out through their network. Not really an SEO play. It's more of an exposure play, a brand play, because you're not going to be getting do follow links from that. You're probably getting sponsored, if anything. Earned syndication, the reason I call it that is because it's the same way I say like earned linking. It's what you're creating is somebody elects to republish that without any incentive other than how it's going to benefit them. So in these cases, you're getting the benefit of a bigger audience and also the link back to you, and they're getting the benefit of having content that's performing well on their site, so they get more traffic, and it supplements their editorial calendar. So, in our example, if Chicago Tribune decides to pick up our story, it's because they think that story is going to engage their audiences. Maybe it's going to get more people to subscribe. Maybe it's going to get them to click on another Chicago Tribune article. And for us, or for Stacker, it's just that's what we do. But for our clients, if it's Stacker Studio, it's the benefit of getting their brand name out there in front of a wide audience, and also the do follow link that comes back to them. So it's a mutually beneficial situation where Chicago Tribune or whomever it is choosing to republish it. That's if it's earned. You didn't pay to have them do it. They decided to do it because it benefits them too.
Got it. Just like SEO, right? Like you earn it and it's there and you didn't pay for it, and it's just great stuff that people just wanted to share. I mean, Jeremy asked, like, would getting picked up by a Newsbreak app an example of earned syndication?
Yeah, if it's organic and it's syndicating, sure. Yeah, if it's if you didn't have to pay for it and it happened naturally, your content earns it then. In that case, even if you didn't actively pitch it, that means that your content got their attention, and that counts too.
Love it. All right, so we're coming close to time here, so I'm gonna ask my last two questions here, and everyone has any questions, go ahead and ask them in the live chat, and I'll try to get to them if we still have time. But my other last question here, the second last question is, how are some ways that for like the lazy marketer, if someone has already existing content, what are some ways to modify existing content to better align with the publisher editorial style that would get picked up?
Yes, that's a great question. We all don't want to duplicate work, right? If we have something that could be repackaged into something else, why wouldn't you do it? I think this is especially easier if it was a data project. I think that in that case, you can 100% do it. I would scan your list of headlines. You can change the headlines, so I'm not telling you to look at the headlines, but looking at the topics, one way to do this is to think of news values. So I mentioned that my degree is in journalism.
Yeah.
One of the first things they teach you are the news values. Some of them meaning what makes something newsy or newsworthy. Some of them are very intuitive. Timeliness. Is this relevant now?
Mm-hmm.
So as you're scrolling through your content, can it be updated? This is a classic one that I think everybody knows. But that also applies for newsworthiness and whether a publisher cares. Maybe there's something that happened recently that suddenly makes that article more relevant. Proximity, we talked about localization. Yeah. Is there a way you can pitch what you did to specific audiences and specific publications because it's more important to them? Can you, use any data that's more specific to different locales? Impact, that's the tangential content way, which is impact basically means how many people does this affect? So the more niche it is, it might be perfect for your keyword strategy and your bottom of the funnel, but a newspaper or a news site is not going to want to run something that only matters to 6 people a month or whatever. So when you're looking through your content, you're kind of you're checking these boxes in your head, is this timely? Does this have a local angle? How many people does this affect? Is it a lot? And if you're checking it's timely, it does affect a lot of people, you're starting to narrow down the number of pieces that you might be able to repurpose into something that's newsworthy. Mm-hmm. Some of the others are prominence, which means that somebody famous is involved. So if there's a celebrity, if you've mentioned Taylor Swift is a core part of your content for some reason, or somebody who everybody likes or cares about, that elevates it in newsworthiness. Because if something happens to Taylor Swift and something happens to me, people are going to care more if it happens to Taylor Swift. And then one of the other news topics I like to talk about is called oddity, or basically, is it unusual? So if something is not typical, it's inherently newsworthy. If you suddenly see a dog walking a person or something, that's a ridiculous example, but something that you would never see is happening, that's inherently newsworthy too. They want to report on things that are just out of the norm. So I use the news values as a checklist of how inherently newsworthy is this, and then if it doesn't check those, can you get it to a place where it does? And that might be a good candidate for repurposing.
Damn! Love it. Okay, Jeremy says can't keep up with all these knowledge bombs. Mind blown. So Amanda, we're at time here. I wanted to go ahead and ask the last question that I asked all my SEO professionals come on here as well. Is that if someone wants to get into the SEO game, become an SEO professional themselves, what are some advice that you can give them?
Sure. Find your community. So for me, it was content. I think especially if you know what part of SEO is intriguing to you, if you don't, try them all. Maybe start as a generalist and see what's appealing to you, because sure, SEO sounds like it's its own thing, but there's so many different aspects of SEO, and there could be a specific part of it that you really like. For me, it's content and links. For other people, it's more technical. You know, for other people, it whatever. There's like so many different aspects of it. So try to explore which one's appealing to you, and then find your community within that space. And those people are going to really help you improve your skills. They'll suggest courses that are great and articles that are great and mentor you and all those things. That's my advice.
Love it. Brian snuck in a question here. Do you have a particular article structure that you follow?
So with Stacker, it kind of depends because we have to do it based on the news feeds that we're built into. Like we're actually in news site CMSs, which means like a writer can have their CMS where it's like, here's a list of stories that you can just decide to run. Mm-hmm. So we have to meet certain formatting standards, which means it's a lot of like image and text, which you honestly see a lot anyway. Yeah. Because that's how people want to consume content. They want to see images and short paragraphs. So it's not like a one-size-fits-all situation, but I would say, to answer your question, if you're trying to pitch certain publishers, check the format of the stories that they run. Because the closer you are to what they're trying to do, especially if you're trying to syndicate your content, the more likely it is that they'll actually republish it.
Love that. Love that. Thank you so much for coming on. Everyone, let's give it a round of applause. Thank you so much. And if anyone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best place people can get a hold of you?
Add me on LinkedIn. My name's Amanda Milligan, or you can email me at amilligan@stacker.com. And I just want to thank you so much for having me on the show and for bearing with these internet issues. I'm like literally on the floor outside of my closet with my router. Thank you all for sticking with me and for having me. It's been really fun.
No, thank you so much. Can you hold up for one quick second while I sign off here? Just hold up for one quick second. All right, guys. That concludes another episode of the SEO Video Show. Please support the channel by liking, subscribing, and hitting that notification bell. And I will see you next week. Peace out.
Thank you for watching. Hope you come back next week. Make sure to subscribe. You don't want to miss a thing. Hope you learn something new, cause the vibe is incredible. From the special SEO professionals, SEO video show. Let's work. Want to see you be an SEO expert. Paul Andre De Vera helping you step it up. No delay right now. Time to level up. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe. Woo!